Chapter 1. Can you hear me? Yes, son, just go to sleep. It will be morning in a few hours. In seconds it was silent, and nothing was heard except the deep breathing and snoring of the sleeping fish. The youngest one, not even awake, yet still muttering words about the sun coming out and the day starting, suddenly hovered away from his father, who was sound asleep inside the bright orange anemone. The young one, a clownfish with colors of orange and 3 white stripes and a little fluttering fin on his right side, left his home and let out a brief moan as the full moon above the surface beamed in his face. Still, he decided to start a journey beyond his yard and through the corals of the reef. I feel funny, Dad, he said as he swayed to the side, not fully aware of what was going on, yet he was still able to make his way around. The Great Barrier Reef had yet still many places for the boy to discover, and so far he had only been to the school grounds, a few places he went for his field trips, the drop-off, his friends' backyards, some parks and a zoo. That was not even half of the reef he lived in. Dad? He said again in his sleep as he came to a crevice and the water got darker. That's when he heard a muffled voice, a deep voice that said his name. It scared him, and when felt his head bump something hard, he startled himself awake. Dad! The little fish gasped and began to panic as he realized he was in some sort of dark room, most likely a cave. Having no idea how he got there, the boy skittishly began to back up and swim in zigzags, although that brought him to come into dead ends, not finding his way out. That's when he heard it again, the deep, frightening voice that called his name, and he continuously whimpered, scattering, swimming back and forth, hyperventilating, and calling for his father. The fish thought he was doomed. Finally, after what felt like an eternity, the boy made his way out of the cave. Dad! Nemo! There he was. His father came swimming for him and grabbing him with his fins and not letting go. It was obvious he was aware of his son. Disappearance soon after he left. The anemone. Nemo. The little clownfish who had been sleep swimming and gotten himself stuck in a cave. Starting blubbering. It's okay, son, his father said in a soothing voice, not letting go until the boy was ready to. Dad, Nemo whispered as he peered up at him. He was a tad bit stunned that his father was not angry with him. He figured that swimming off in the middle of the night would make the man infuriated. Although Nemo wasn't quite certain how he got out there. He couldn't even remember leaving his home. The only thing that crossed the little fish's mind was the feeling of being uncomfortable, troublesome and afraid. Let's go home, his father said softly and took the boy's better fin to keep him safe, as he guided him away from the dark cave. Nemo gave an agreeing nod and took off with him. As the two swam through the dark waters of the reef, a thought had crossed his mind, and that was that his neighbor kid Sandy Plankton had once said that a lot of fish partied every night on the reef. It had never occurred to Nemo, and he never came across the idea of checking it out. The water felt thick to him, and it was almost as if he were in a dream. Nemo suddenly realized he was half asleep, so he jerked himself, awake and gradually found himself, still swimming by his father's side. Dad, he started. How did this happen? I didn't mean to get to that place. I didn't mean to leave home. What surprised the boy was that his father grinned. It happens to all of us, Nemo, he said as he chuckled. It was probably just something you ate. Sleep swimming is nothing to be ashamed about. Nemo briefly turned back to see if he could get a glimpse of the cave he got himself into. It was no longer visible, which meant that they were getting a lot closer to home. The boy sighed with relief. Then, thinking about what his father said about sleep swimming not being shameful, Nemo wasn't so sure that it was an issue. It was the fact that it scared him. After another few moments, The clownfish finally made it to their yard, and their anemone was safe and sound where it usually was. They stopped in front of their home. "It's all over now," the boy's father said as he turned to his son with a sincere look on his face. "Time to get more sleep. You will need it for school. Come on, now, son." He instantly swam into the anemone. Nemo, however, was not quite ready to join him yet. Although he was already home, he still felt like he was inside the cave, especially when the full moon slowly began to dim away. Whether it was a cloud in the sky or a figment in his mind, the boy's body began to feel tight, and the sound of the waves bouncing up the surface started roaring loudly. Nemo decided to swim inside, shifting slowly and brushing against the anemone tentacles.